start of college basketball season, ladies and gentlemen, because it is officially the start of the Field of 68 After Dark season. What's going on? My name is Rob Dauster, and this is our Field of 68 ACC preview show. I'm joined by the one and only Randolph Childress, the legend from Wake Forest himself. And I'm also joined by Jeff Goodman, Stadium Insider, who goes to a couple games and decides to tell everybody that he knows everyone.
I'm a legend. What are you talking about? I'm a legend.
In your own mind. He is
whatever it takes.
Own mind. Well, listen, the big news is that we are back. Over the course of the next 2 weeks, we're going to be rolling through 6 power conference previews, a look at some of the best teams outside of those power 6 conferences, as well as a breakdown of our all-American teams where, spoiler alert, we may be having interviews with a number of the players that make our all-Americans list. It's going to be a lot of fun. On today's show, we're diving into everything ACC, the best storylines, the best teams. We're going to give you our power rankings. I'm going to make RC rank every single team in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Is going to be fun. I'm going to put them on the hot seat. Speaking of hot seats, we're going to talk about the coaches that need to get some wins to save their jobs this season. There's much, much more. First and foremost, though, I need to let you guys know about the Almanac. That's what I'm using. That's why I have all my notes here. As you can see, I got the highlighter working. We're selling them $19.99. You can get them in the link in the description below. It's the best way to get yourself prepared for the season. 1,300 words on every single Division I team. We spoke to every single Division I head coach. The entire thing, Jeff, I don't know if you have it in front of you.
I do. You want to see it?
600,000 words. When you print the entire thing out,
there it is.
It is 400.
Print it out. Print it out, baby.
Look it's at you. 407 pages front and back. That is 814 pages of content. I promise you, if there's a fact in college basketball this season that's not in there, I will reimburse your money for the Almanac.
No, don't say that. Don't.
Out of Jeff's salary, out of Jeff's pocket, out of his gambling winnings. Anyway, listen, the ACC, we're going to get into that. We're going to dive into everything in this conference. I want to talk about the biggest storylines first, and without a doubt, Jeff, I think the single biggest storyline in this conference is Coach K is gone. According to Shamon Williams, North Carolina ended his career in the Final Four last season in Cameron Indoor Stadium last season, and John Shire is stepping in to replace him. How do you think Shire fares, Jeff?
I worry about Shire already, to be honest. I worried about him before Dariq Whitehead got hurt, and now we don't know when he's going to be available, and he's certainly one of their better ready-made freshmen, the guys that could probably impact right away if he was healthy. I love Derek Lively. Kyle Filipowski's talented. I just think they got too many young dudes for a rookie head coach who's going to have a absolute gauntlet of a schedule early, starting with the Champions Classic. You've got other big-time matchups that Duke has. So I worry about it. I think they could honestly – I thought about not ranking them in my preseason top 25. I have them about 14, but I debated, you know what, should they even be in the top 25 preseason with a new head coach and a bunch of freshmen and a couple of veterans that were pieces?
Yes, to answer your question, they should be in the preseason top 25 because in my mind, you're kind of projecting towards what they could be at the end of the year. And I think that if we're going to say that Duke is a top 15 team by the end of the year, RC, that's probably fair. But right now, as of this very moment, I think they're going to take some lumps early on in the season. Is that fair?
I think they're going to struggle out of the gate, and it's because they're young. I mean, we can say all we want, they're talented, but they're freshmen nonetheless. And the biggest thing is they've gotten away with that in the past, but there's no Paulo Banchero in this class. There's no Zion. There's no – I mean, you can go as far back, and Brandon Ingram was just a freakish athletic length guy, that you couldn't match up with. So there's not one of those guys in this class. And Derek Lively's the number one player in the class. But again, he's more of a defender, rebounder, offensive thing he brings that'll come later in the year. So they're really young. This is as young as a Duke team that I can recall in quite some time.
You know what else they don't have? The refs. They're not going to have that either with K. No, but it's true. Again, it's true. They're not going to get calls. They've gotten calls for years, and deservedly so. They've had a Hall of Famer on the sideline. Now it's going to go where they're probably going to be fortunate to get calls.
I don't know if I would go that far, but I do think that the intimidation factor, maybe that's saying it too hard, but referees are humans, right? And I think that there is a presence with a guy like a Coach K or a guy like a Roy Williams or a guy like a John Calipari or a Jim Boeheim it makes it harder to not give close calls to that team, if that makes sense. What I'm worried about, Jeff, is from the Almanac. You interviewed John Shire for it. He has a quote here. It says, "We can be a heck of a defensive team, and we have to hang our hat on that." To me, that is a huge red flag, because the biggest concern I have with freshmen coming in is learning what is expected on the defensive end of the floor. And they're going to be doing that, RC, under a coach that has never run a team or run a program himself. If they are a team that's going to be relying on their defense early on, to me, that's a concern for a couple of reasons, not the least of which is, can you play Derek Lively and Kyle Filipowski together?
No. I don't think you can. I think they're going to, if it is, he's going to play zone. What we know, John, is, Shire's going to do is he's not afraid to change things. I mean, I didn't believe he'd go outside the Duke family and add to his staff. Yeah. I thought he'd bring in, maybe some other veteran guys on his staff. He didn't. I respect that. I think he'll struggle early because it's just the nature of the business with his team. Everyone else is getting old, and they're just really, really young. So I don't care who's coaching his team, K or not. They're going to struggle out of the gate because they're really, really young, because they're at the mercy of the class. I mean, if we were to fast forward this and this was next year, we wouldn't have this conversation, because they'd have two players we're like, hey, that's the number 1, number 2 pick in the draft. They're done. It's just different. We go back a year ago, we knew Paolo was going to be top 2, number 1 or 2 in the draft. They don't have that guy. No one's sitting here saying Dariq Whitehead is going to be the number 1 pick in the draft next year. They're just at the mercy of these incoming guys.
I love Lively, but Lively is not a scorer.
No,
he's a guy that, honestly, if you're going to get 10 and 10 out of, and maybe 2.5, 3 blocks, that's probably a legitimate hope for John Shire and the staff. Lively's not a guy, again, for those people who haven't seen him, he is long. He runs like a guard. He can finish in transition. He can make an occasional 3. And Filipowski's built the same. You just saw him, RC, right? You saw them recently.
Yeah.
They have similar body builds. They're both super long. And Filipowski, if he's not making shots, I don't know what he's doing.
Here's my biggest concern with them defensively is the value for Derek Lively long-term is his ability to be a guy that can protect the rim while also being able to do different things in ball screen coverages, right? Whether it's playing drop, whether it's even at certain times switching out onto the point guards. The hardest thing to do with big guys is to teach them how to do all of these different reads and have all of these different coverages on the defensive end of the floor in ball screen actions. And he's going to be the anchor of your defense as a freshman. That's a very difficult thing to do. I do want to turn this a little bit because we are going to be joined by Jeremy Roach here in a second. RC, you are a DMV guy. You've seen him play. I don't know if you guys recruited him, but I'm sure that you were kind of, you knew who he was coming through the high school ranks. By the end of last season, he was playing some really good basketball. I think you can make the argument they don't win a couple different tournament games if it's not for Jeremy Roach making plays down the stretch. What do you think should be a realistic expectation for what he can provide this season?
That's the $1 million question. Now, what can he provide? I think he has to play high level point guard play at the beginning of the season, because those guys are going to need his help. Well, of course, they're going to need his leadership because he's the only returning guy. But to get Lively going, he has to play, get in the paint, throw lobs. He has to be the facilitator. And let's be honest, that's something he hasn't had full-time responsibility since he's been at Duke. Starting out the year last year, Wendell Moore was the point guard. Right. He was actually 3rd on the team last year in assists. So we're saying now we're going to put the ball in his hands. And he's done that in the past. He has not done that consistently at this level, and there's no help for him. I mean, he's dealing with
the difference.
Backcourt.
Yeah, that's the difference. Now you're relying on Jeremy Roach. Before, whatever he gave you was a bonus.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Big difference.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the interview now with Jeremy Roach.
First of all, congratulations, man. All-ACC preseason. How does that feel?
It feels good. Just knowing that put in the work all this summer, and guys kind of acknowledged me that I would be first team. I mean, I don't kind of look at that, look at stats, look at accolades, because all I want to do is win. But to be honored, preseason first team All-ACC, it means a lot. But I got to put the work in now. I got to go show it.
Well, speaking of putting in the work, I spoke to D. Clinton today. He said you was working on a jump shot all summer, but you still can't outshoot him. So always remember that. Well, listen, man, I know you expect to have a breakout year. Great honor. A lot of respect for you. I've watched you since you were a freshman in high school, so I'm not surprised by the level you've achieved and the direction and where you're going. But I do want to talk to you about a little bit about your role in this team. I think people don't understand. Like, let's go back to a year ago. Things didn't start out great. You guys had a tremendous amount of expectations, but by the end, you were playing as well as anyone on that team. What clicked and when did it click for you last year?
Last year, so started off kind of up and down, and then I got subbed out the lineup and was kind of going back and forth with that, and then it just clicked. My high school coach hit me, and he was just like, whatever it takes for you to get back on the floor, whatever it takes for the coach, whatever you need from the coaches, like, you got to do it. And whether you get 15 minutes, 12 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, you got to make your tape look good for that amount of time that you're on the court. So when I heard that, I just was like, I had to lock in. And also, he was talking about, like, you don't want to be that guy who's not getting involved in whether you're playing or not. You don't want to be that guy who's outside, not having a good attitude, not showing love to your teammates and stuff like that. You don't want to be that guy named like, oh, he doesn't really care about the team. He's only care about himself. So that's really what kind of like took me out of my shell. And I was like, I got to focus on others and not really worry about what I got to do. Just basically do what I got to do on the court to win and do what the coaches asked me to. And I think that's when it clicked.
I don't think people understand. I think for a person in your position or point guard, it's the hardest thing to do is learning when to score and also playing with and without the ball. Now, watch you play in high school. To get to this level, most times someone just gives you the ball and you just run with it. Then you get to this team, and then last year you're sharing it with Wendell. You know, you're on the ball, you're off the ball, and it is a big difference. I don't think people understand the difference in playing with and without the ball. So how has that adjustment been?
It's just for this year. I mean, like you said, it's a big adjustment. Like, you got to know when to score, know when to pass. Especially for this team, I got to get guys involved, but I also have to score at the same time. So just trying to find a balance of both. I think just for me this year is just kind of getting guys involved early, and then stuff will open up for me later in the game.
One thing I've realized, Goodman, about talking with guys from the DMV is they somehow always find a way to mention in a conversation that they're from the DMV. So, RC, I'm going to give this one to you. You got about 30 seconds, and we'll move on to UNC. Best lineup for Duke this season, best five, assuming Whitehead is healthy and assuming Tyrese Proctor kind of makes that step to be, not just a reclass freshman. What's their best five?
Going off of what Coach said, I think the best lineup defensively for them, because they're going to struggle some offensively, is going to be Roach. I think it'll be Jacobson, Derek Whitehead.
Jacobson. He combined the names.
Yeah.
Nice job.
Grandison. I'm sorry, Grandison. I said Jacobson. You're right, Grandison. I'm thinking of. I got to go with Mark Mitchell at the 4. I know he's coming in as a freshman. He doesn't have the high, he has a reputation, but again, he's not as highly ranked as Lively and Philip House.
Because he was hurt. He was hurt on the AU circuit. That's why. But
having watched him, he's going to give them a defensive versatility. He's going to be able to switch 1 through 4, sometimes 5, and obviously Lively patrolling the paint. And he's going to be able to switch some with drop coverage. He's athletic enough. He can do whatever they want. That'll be their best lineup. When they go to the bench, they'll have to change it. I think they got to implement zone some this year.
Yep. It'll be interesting because a lot of those pieces are very, very young. I mentioned Proctor. He is a reclassified freshman, and Whitehead missed a lot of the preseason with the foot, ankle, something or other. Yeah.
And what do you think of Proctor before we move on quickly, Rob? What do you think of Proctor?
I really like him. He can really play, really shoots it. He's thin. You can pressure him a little bit, probably speed him up. That'll come in time. Really shoots the mess out. He shoots the crap out of it. He can really stroke it. Really stroke
it. So he'll play. They're saying he's going to play a lot.
He's going to play. He's going to play a lot. He'll play a lot. Great size. He'll play a lot.
It's early season Field of 68 After Dark when RC is hitting us with shooting the crap out of it. So we'll get you into midseason form here soon enough, RC. All right, I want to talk about North Carolina. It's amazing that we've gone 15 minutes into the show and we haven't gotten to them yet. They are the preseason number 1 team according to the AP. They are the preseason number 2 team according to the Almanac. Goodman, I'm going to throw this to you first. They lost Brady Manick, which was a big loss, but Leaky Black came back. Armando Bacot came back. Caleb Love came back. RJ Davis came back. They added Pete Nance. All of a sudden, they have a team that looks pretty dang good, at least on paper, a lot better than it did about December of last season. What do you make of these Tar Heels?
I mean, it's crazy to me still because I still have a hard time grasping what they did from March 5th on and saying to myself, that's going to be them. But I do think they're going to be close to that. I think they're going to be a lot closer to that than pre-March 5th when they were frankly a fringe tournament team. Pete Nance is the key. You know, as Hubert told me, we were so lucky to get Pete Nance. I love the portal. That's what he said to me. Yeah. Roy Williams hated the portal. Hubert's loving it because, again, he got a guy that honestly could get them a national title. I think without Pete Nance, they're not in the equation for a national title. That may sound crazy, but that's how important Brady Manick and a skilled big who could operate and space the floor. He could rebound. Now, I don't know if Nance is going to pick up where he left off last year and shoot, 43% from three, but he doesn't have to. He's just got to shoot like 36, 38 from three. There's enough guys around him that he's going to get uncontested shots. And I love Nance because he's a team dude who just wants to win after being at Northwestern for the last few years. So I think he's exactly what the doctor ordered and why, to me, Carolina is the favorite to win the national title.
Yeah, I think that's so important because he is, in a vacuum, RC, an NBA player, right? You get these 6'7", 6'8", 6'9" guys that are as strong as he is, that can switch the way that he can, that shoot the way that he can. And he's exactly that kind of role piece that all these NBA teams are looking for. But he came back to college, and like Goodman said, he's a guy that's going to buy into a team concept because he's never won before. And I think that is so important for this group specifically for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is, guys like Caleb Love. I think it's fair to say guys like Armando Bacot. For a while last season, it seemed like they were playing more for draft stock, more for accolades at the end of the year than they were for, to go cliche, the team across the front of the jersey. So what do you see coming from this backcourt this year, I guess, is the long-winded way to ask this question.
Well, I'll say, before I even answer that, I'll say the biggest thing we're underestimating about Pete Nance, in addition to this team, is what he's going to add defensively. Because that was the game plan coming into playing them last year, was to attack Brady, Brady Manick. That was the one you attacked. You put him in ball screens or you just went right at him. You're not going to make a living doing that. So now he offers them that much versatility. I'm a big RJ Davis fan.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the Bob Cousy list come out today, and for me to see
they screwed up.
Not on it, they screwed that up. Like there's no way. There's no way. There's 20 other point guards in the.
No, I think they screwed up the position.
Okay.
I think they should have. They're going to have RJ at the two guard, and they had Love at the point. They screwed it up.
His involvement throughout the year, I thought, was the reason they went to the national championship game. I mean, we already know Armando was good all year long. He had his moments, but he was pretty consistent rebounding. All the other guys, Love was hit or miss, which he was all the way up to the end. Yeah. His consistency was the reason, his involvement as a point guard. I told him at ACC Media Day, I'm a huge fan of his, and I think they'll go as far as he leads them. I think he's as good a point guard as there is in the country. So I'm a huge fan. We know how explosive Love is. If he develops a level of consistency and with his shot selection, then, this team it'll distance himself from everyone else.
Those two in combination, I think, are exactly what you want out of a backcourt, right? Like you got RJ Davis, who's a talented dude who can go get 25 if he needs to, but also can be the guy that is fine setting the table, that is fine making sure that Armando gets the ball in the spots. Whereas Caleb Love, there are going to be games where you just need someone to go out and get you 30. And Caleb Love is that guy that can go out and get you 30. Now, he might also go 2 for 17 the next 3 nights, but you're not going to need him. You know what I mean? Like when you need him to do what he did against, say, Duke in the Final Four in the second half, he's capable of doing that. And I don't know how many players at their best are as dangerous as Caleb Love is. Goodman, I'm going to ask you this. I think what we saw throughout last season was that they pay attention, right? They see the clippings, they see the headlines, they see the tweets. They know what the conversation.
No. Hey, they heard us. We were like 5 feet away from them.
Yes, they know what the conversation is about North Carolina, and when people like us are on the floor of the Mohegan Sun Arena saying that, oh, these guys are soft, they're selfish, they don't play together while they're walking by. Which, by the way, we probably shouldn't have done that. They're also probably going to hear preseason number 1, saying Caleb Love is so dangerous. RJ Davis should be the Cousy, whatever. Armando Bacot, preseason national player of the year, all this stuff. So how do you, as Hubert Davis, prevent that from getting in? How do you stop these guys from getting a big head?
So I'm going to throw it to RC because obviously I've never played it at that level. So I think he's much more adept at answering that than me. But I will say Hubert Davis told me that is going to be maybe his most difficult task this year is, the noise last year that ended up motivating them. How do they use it to their advantage this year instead of it hurting them and these guys getting a little too full of themselves going into the year?
When I went to their practices this year, he reminded those guys, he's like, hey, we're one rebound away from winning a national championship. He's like, he told all those guys, you guys have done nothing. He was like, we hang banners here. And he was like, had you got a rebound, you guys would be a part of history here at Carolina, which is why you came. For them, it's simple. I think it was harder a year ago because they were getting their ass kicked. Let's just call it what it was. It was blowouts. It was 20-point blowouts. And then all of a sudden they turned it around. Now there's a confidence about them that we know we can do it, but they didn't finish the job. So I think that the belief that they could do it, I think they've proven to themselves they can do it. Now there's an expectation among themselves, whereas last year there was doubt. There were doubts like, are we this good? Are we this bad? Where do we stand? Where do we rank in all this? I think they've answered all that. So answering the bell every day, being the team that's being hunted, but it's Carolina. So every game outside of Duke, they're hunted, they're chased. So it's always been that way. So this year will be no different. I think it's harder last year. I think they'll be fine. I think they'll be the team we expect them to be.
I like too. They've got a little bit more depth, Rob. And Hubert said he's not going to ride the starters as much as he did last year, which I don't know if it wore him down, but it certainly looked that way with the injuries, with guys getting tired in the Final Four. I love Seth Trimble. I think Seth Trimble can make sure that RJ Davis is not playing more than 32 minutes a game.
Yeah. I don't think that they were tired. I think it was just Armando Bacot sprained his ankle. And look, I'm never, ever going to question that dude's toughness again. We've said this before. He is a warrior. Sure I want that guy in my corner anytime I'm going into a game, going into a fight, going into whatever. Like get that guy on my roster. And Seth Trimble, you're right. Stud. Puff Johnson, got to respect him too. He threw up right in front of me. like 10 feet in front of me on the court. Which
he didn't throw up.
I don't know if I need to see that again or relive that moment. All right. The last interesting, I don't want to say the last interesting, but the third biggest storyline for me in this conference, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, is the question of whether or not UVA is back. Right. They won the title in 2019 and they haven't quite been at that same level the last 3 seasons. Part of the reason why you lose 3 NBA players off that roster, that's a hard thing to replace. So where do you guys stand on what this Virginia team is? It feels like this is the most buzz RC that they have had probably since that team that was coming back after losing to UMBC.
Well, they got their whole starting 5 back and this team started playing better basketball later in the year. I think they'll be right there competing. They're an old team. I mean, they are experienced as anyone else in this league. I mean, Kie has he's on the national championship team and he's still playing. So not many teams return 5 guys. So they're getting 5 guys.
What was it like guarding him? Because he was a freshman your senior year, right?
That's what it feels like. I teased him about that. I teased him. I tell you why I'm so high on him now is because I had concerns about him. I early on because this team struggled to score. I mean, they went 10 minutes or 12 minutes of a half without a field goal, but they got depth. I think adding, I asked Kihei and I asked actually Coach Bennett, and they were bragging about the Isaac McNeely kid, saying that because he not only his ability to shoot, but he can make shots for him, which they're going to need. But if you don't defend, you can't play for Tony. And he played pack line in high school. And that's an adjustment that freshmen struggle with. He played it in high school. That's going to speed up his transition for a freshman that's going to allow him to play.
Mm-hmm. Caden Shedrick will be better.
Yep.
Kihei's Kihei, right? Like he is what he is. They had a Ben Vanderplas who's just kind of a Swiss Army knife type guy. They'll bring off the bench. That's a veteran.
That's the big thing.
He can shoot it some. Yeah, he can shoot it. McNeely, like RC said, can really shoot it. And to me, I think the biggest difference is what's Tony Bennett all about? Developing, right? Developing, being older. And he had a bunch of new dudes last year for the most part, right? Jaden Gardner, good player, first year in their system after transferring in. Armand Franklin, same thing. He couldn't make a shot. Now those guys know Tony Bennett, his system. He knows them. I just feel like, again, nobody's hurt more by the transfer portal and all the turnover to me than Tony Bennett, because he needs consistency. He needs retention. And now he's got it this year.
Yeah, to your point, they lost Trey Murphy, who was an unexpected first-round pick 1 year out of the program. They lost Casey Morcell to NC State. They lost Justin McCoy to North Carolina. They lost Jabri Abdul-Rahim to Georgia out of last year's program. I will say this. They have a 27th year senior at the point in Kihei Clark. Reese Beekman is a junior. Armand Franklin is a senior, second year at Virginia. Jaden Gardner is a fifth-year senior, second season at Virginia. Caden Shedrick is a redshirt junior, and they have two fifth-year seniors coming off the bench. They are as experienced as anybody in college basketball, and that stuff matters. I want to ask you this, RC. Reese Beekman, they need him. He can do everything except go get you a bucket when you need it. Right. I think he's going to be able to add that this year.
He doesn't have to be great at it because, as you know, they're going to control the pace. He just needs to be good, and he's just take a step. All he has to do is get better. And he is, of all these guys we know we're getting, he's the one guy that we feel like, other than the additions to the team, he's the one guy we feel like can add something to his game to get better. I think he will. We'll see what system will they run. Will they run a traditional, will they spread it out a little bit? I think he's going to tinker a little bit with his offense. But either way, I think Reese Beekman is the guy that can add a little bit. And that's all they're going to need, because it's going to be the first one to 60 if you want to beat Virginia.
5 of the last 9 years, Virginia has won the ACC regular season title. Are you betting against them? I know Carolina, everybody loves them, myself included. But gun to your head right now, Carolina or Virginia, guys, to win the ACC regular season title. Who are you taking?
Well, I would say this. North Carolina at Bet Rivers is plus 150 to win the regular season title, and Virginia is plus 700 to win the regular season title.
I'll take Virginia.
Duke is second right now in that ranking at plus 300, 3-1. If you're going to ask me who I'm picking straight up, it's going to be North Carolina. If you're asking me who I would rather bet on right now, lay $100 on them, I'd rather lay $100 on Virginia at plus 700 than North Carolina at plus 150.
Those are great odds.
That's a good answer. That's a lot of money. That's a great odds of it. But I think the experience that Carolina has, I think that's the biggest thing, and their ability to score. I think that's the hardest thing. They're going to be able to hurt you in so many different ways with so many shooters. They got a guy inside you can't guard. Virginia likes to double the post. So that means someone in North Carolina is going to get an open shot or a closeout. That's going to be tough. If they were younger, I'd give it to Virginia. I just think Carolina has the experience as much as Virginia has this year, and I'd give them a slight edge because of their ability to score. But I wouldn't want to. I'd be holding my bet as long as I can hedge my bet. I'd be waiting the last minute before I put my money down.
Me too.
I will say this: if you're into the futures betting odds and getting into the futures market, make sure you subscribe to the Field of 68 Daily. The link is in the description below. We use Beehive as our server there. We are going to have plenty of content over the course of the next week or two when it comes to the futures markets, not just the ACC, with every conference in the country, as well as with the national title futures. There's a lot of value out there, Jeff. I'm going to tease it right there. Make sure you subscribe to Daily to find out. All right, I want to get into the league tires, as my man T.O. would call them, the ACC's tiers. I think we can all agree North Carolina deserves to be in the first tier, and probably in the first tier by themselves, right? And I think we all agree that UVA now and Duke eventually will probably belong in that second tier once we get to like about the February time of year. All right. What I want to know from you guys, there are a bunch of teams in that kind of next level, whether it's Florida State, whether it's Miami, whether it's Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, North Carolina State, Syracuse. I want to know who you guys think are in that next level. Goodman, I'm going to go to you first on this one in the ACC.
The next tire for me, according to T.O. here, I can't believe he still said that, by the way. Imagine saying tires instead.
And believed it.
Yes.
It's awesome.
I've heard that down here. All
right. So my next tire would have a bunch of teams. It might have 6 teams, in fact. And I might even put Duke in this tire. Virginia Tech, Florida State, Miami, Notre Dame, and then maybe, probably not though. I'll go those 4. And then I'm going to say NC State, Syracuse are in maybe a next tire.
I agree with that. I think there's a clear-cut top 7, RC.
I agree with you. I think Wake's going to be in them, and when it's all said and done, I think.
Oh, here we go.
I know.
Come on.
I know you guys are going to call me a homer pick on that, but I believe it. I think they'll be right there in the mix.
How much did Forbes give you to say that? How much?
He offered to buy me. He offered to buy me. No, seriously. I do. I think they will. I think they'll be middle of the pack, around 7th or 8th. I think 8th will be a good spot for them. They'll be right in the position they were last year. And if they get a few wins against the Carolinas or the Dukes this year, like they did last year, I think that'll get them over the hump.
So the two teams that are the most interesting to me out of that next group, right? I'm really interested to see what Miami's going to be and all that John Ruiz money. And Florida State, Leonard Hamilton, he seems to always have a team that is like 10 or 11 deep with a bunch of guys that you maybe never heard of before, surrounded by a potential lottery pick, right? And they just find a way to win 25 games and make it to the Sweet 16. Last year, they were so banged up. There was one point where every projected starter was not playing for them. This year, they're bringing a lot of those guys back, whether it's Jalen Worley, whether it's Matthew Cleveland, whether it is Baba Miller. Shout out to Baba Miller. He's got a chance to be something special there.
Talented.
So I want to know, RC, I'll go to you first on this one. What do you, out of those two, right? Florida State, Miami. Who are you most interested in seeing this season?
I think they're right there going to compete for the league, both of them. If Jalen Gainey didn't get hurt, I would have picked Florida State to win the league.
Wow. To win the league?
To win the league.
What?
Because I think their depth and when they're healthy in their style of play.
Whoa.
I would have had no choice picking them to be right at the very top. I think their style of play, when they get the talent, bothers them. And we talk about it takes a minute for guys to fit in that system because, we talked about those guys, the Matthew Cleveland and those guys, and we talked about some of their guard play. We get the high recruited kids coming in there. You're not going to play 30 minutes in that system. You're basically playing TV timeout to TV timeout. So guys like Caleb Mills, who I think is a flat out bucket who can score as much as anybody, that's a hard adjustment. And I spoke to him about that, asking those guys, and that's hard to do. I think a year in that system with those guys, they just lost rim protection, though. That, losing Gainey is massive for them.
We are currently living in a world where Randolph Childress, ACC legend, ESPN analyst, is telling us that if a Brown transfer had not gotten injured, Florida State would be winning the ACC. Right after telling us that Wake Forest had a chance to win the conference.
Yeah,
that's
no. I didn't say win the conference. I said compete.
The field of 68 after dark is in full swing.
I didn't say Wake was going to win it. I said they're going to sneak up in that middle tier of the conference play. That was what I said.
He said they're going to make the Final Four. That's what you heard it, right, Goodman?
Hey, I'll live with it.
So well the first 20 minutes, and then it went completely off the rails. I don't know. Did you have a gummy or something?
This was the fight. Think about it. After they struggled, even after they lost starters, this was a team that won 5 or 6 games in conference play, and then they just got completely wiped out.
Well, see, I agree with you that they're going to be really good, right? I do think that the two sophomores are going to take a step forward. Caleb Mills was a guy that we talked about. I think it was we talked about in last year's ACC preview show as someone that could come in and be a program kind of changing impact because he's a bucket getter. They didn't have bucket getters last year. Cameron Fletcher, I think that he has a chance to step up and really kind of impact it, right? Baba Miller's 6'11", blocking shots, making he's exactly what you want out of Florida State players. I just did not see you coming in and telling us that they're not going to win the league because the Brown transfer got hurt.
Because he was the one guy I know to give them the versatility defensively, that the way they want to play.
That's true.
And they're going to be able to throw 15 fouls at that center spot, which is the way they want to play. Now they lose their depth. They don't have 15 fouls at center anymore in a league that has, John Hughley, that has PJ Hall, that has Armando Bacot. There's teams with front court guys that you need those 15 fouls, and they just lost 5 of them and a guy that gave them defensive versatility.
All right, look, I'm in. I believe it. If you're telling me that, then I'm gonna be on your. You said it with enough conviction. I don't even care. I'm just gonna take it to the bank. All right, Goodman. We have a Jim Larrañaga coach team in Miami with maybe the best backcourt in college basketball. I don't think it's crazy to say that Nigel Pack and Isaiah Wong as upperclassmen. I'll put it like this: they are as good as anybody in college basketball with the way that Nigel can shoot and the way that Isaiah can score. And if you're going to give me Coach L with 2 really, really good guards, I think you just kind of have to say, yeah, that's going to be a good team because that's kind of what they do, right?
Yeah, and to me, I think Jordan Miller's the underrated dude on that team because we know what Wong and Pack are going to do. Jordan Miller's going to take that next jump because of all they lost last year, right? I mean, McGusty, Wardenberg, Charlie Moore was in his like 12th year. They lost a lot of experience on that team, but I think the big thing for them is up front, right? Like who steps forward. They're going to need somebody to step forward, but they are going to have really, really good perimeter play. And, the only big question is, and I don't know if it's real or not, right? I still don't know if whether NIL is going to actually creep its way into the locker room and potentially affect the chemistry of a team. But this is the only team where the numbers got out there publicly. And I don't know. I mean, Naja Pack, $400,000, Norchad Omier, the Arkansas State transfer, he's also getting paid a ton of money. We saw Wong wanted more and deserved more and didn't get more. So if Nigel Pack doesn't have the year and Wong goes bananas, I don't know. I mean, again, I don't think Larinaga cares. He's 70, whatever, and he just wants to coach him up. But RC, do you see that like having any effect in some of these teams, or am I making something where there's nothing there?
That depends on the locker room. I mean, in some cases, you're right. I mean, I can agree with you on it. I don't know if it changes what the league projects you to be. They don't care at that level. So in the locker room, he's still going to have to go out and perform at an all-conference level to give himself a shot to ultimately be where he wants to be. I think those things are taken care of. I find it hard to believe that Nigel Pack, I heard about the numbers. I'm pretty sure there was just a conversation like, hey, let's somebody called him and said, let's talk about this. Let's get this resolved. And it's been resolved. There's no doubt in my mind. There's no way in the world you're going to risk, because he could have gone in a portal and got twice as much or three times as much as that. So when he stayed, I thought somebody just made a phone call and said, let's calm this down. You'll get NIL money. Don't worry about it. Because if he was stuck on that, he put his name in a portal. He's making as much money as anybody.
All right. So if I had to put some kind of money on it, I would say North Carolina, Duke, Virginia, Miami, and Florida State are the teams I look at in this conference and say, okay, they have a very, very good shot of being tournament teams. It would be a disappointing year if they didn't make it. Mm-hmm. Virginia Tech probably have a team that's good enough to be in the conversation. Notre Dame,
Mike Young, baby. Mike Young and shooting. Like, so I'm not betting against Mike Young with shooters.
Okay, Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, NC State, are those the next three teams that you could see getting in? Where do you stand on those three, Goodman?
Yeah, I would say Virginia Tech to me could finish. It wouldn't shock me if Virginia Tech finishes third in the league this year. Wouldn't shock me. Again,
there's nothing that Mike Young could do that would shock me with a basketball team. Right. There's just he'll figure something out.
They'll be better this year than they were last year.
Yeah, I mean, they got much back, which was
they got depth.
Yeah.
They got depth now. They got much more depth than they had. I mean, they losing Aluma was big. They can't replace him. Again, that's that.
But Murphy was limited, RC. Yeah, that was the one thing. Murphy was so limited. Padula comes in and honestly has a much higher upside.
He was better.
Can shoot it. He is better. He is better. So I love Virginia Tech, and I think Notre Dame is dangerous because they bring back everybody. Obviously, they lost Blake Wesley.
Shooters. But like both those teams are just loaded with guys that can make shots.
Yes. And Starling comes in for Blake Wesley, and they bring in a transfer in Marcus Hammond that Mike Brave feels like can give him 10, 12 points a night. So they're old, which usually those Notre Dame teams that are old, what happens? They win. Good.
Yeah. Here's the problem. The one spot that they are not old, RC, is at the point guard spot. JJ Starling. Talk to me about him. Do you trust him? Is he going to be good enough?
Not at the point. I don't trust him at the point. Yeah. I think Marcus Hammond handles that responsibility. He slides in and starts as a guard, which I think off the ball as a combo guard is where they want him to be. He helps them with that. I think the key to their team is going to be Matt Zona at center. You know, they lost Atkinson. Atkinson could score inside last year. He was a good player. And losing his production is going to be big for Notre Dame. The question is always going to be with Notre Dame. It's going to be, are they going to guard anybody? Can they get stops? Mm-hmm. Like that won't change with this group. You know, JJ Starling isn't doing that. They're just not as athletically, you know, with the freshmen or anybody else. And so it's going to be stops again. They committed to the defensive end a little bit last year. Will they get stops this year enough will be determined whether they get into the tournament, whether some of these teams pass them or they kind of come back to the pack.
Can I make an argument for NC State
Sure.
being the most dangerous team outside of like the top 5? You want Kevin Keats, right? You want veteran players on the roster. You want a whole bunch of talented guards, and you want guys who can get out of pressure with some level of rim protection at the end and some level of shooting in the half court. I think Jarkel Joyner, Terquavian Smith, and Casey Morsell, if Casey Morsell ends up being the guy we thought he was going to be when he first got to Virginia, that's a really good trio. It may not, but that's a on paper, that is a really good backcourt, potentially a really good trio if Casey Morsell takes the lead. I do think that Jack Clark is a guy. I remember first game I ever called for NBC Sports Network was LaSalle hosting St. Louis. It was Jack Clark's, I want to say, 4th game, 6'8" kid that played point guard in high school until he had a 7-inch growth spurt, shoots at like 40% from 3. He just has not been able to stay healthy. If he can be that kind of stretch 4 playmaker, pulling people away from the basket, the big concern with me is whether or not DJ Burns can be a rim protector. You got to have some kind of presence on the inside, but whether he is a shot blocker or a guy that does what Jalen Williams did at Arkansas and just kind of is big and in the way, you need some kind of presence inside if you're going to defend the way that Kevin Keats wants to defend. But I think there's upside on that roster. Am I crazy? Am I losing my mind?
You know, I think the big thing I worry about with NC State is you brought in a bunch of transfers, which Kevin Keats had to do, right? I mean, he's trying to save his job. He's getting older. But he brought in a lot of transfers that hadn't won a lot of games at their previous spot. That always worries me, right? Jack Clark, I think he could be good. Jarkel Joyner, I think he could be good. Those guys lost a lot of games. And then the holdovers, right? Smith lost a lot of games last year at NC State. So that part worries me. But we'll see. I mean, he rolled the dice and he did it again, saying to himself, you know what? If I go down, I'm going down with transfers and older dudes.
The one thing I'll add to that is I think he'll get back into pressing because he added bodies. And that's one thing. They didn't have bodies last year. They couldn't get up. Kevin Keats' program used to press you, get after you. They need to turn you over. They don't want to play in this slow down half-court pace. They got caught in the net last year because they didn't have bodies. And I think now they got bodies. DJ Burns is not a rim protector, but he's a body. He's 5 fouls. He's a guy you're going to be able to occasionally throw the ball to inside. They're going to continue to play with. They got 15 fouls at that spot again. They're going to have a 3-headed monster at center. They'll cater their defense when he's in, leave him inside, and then the other guys, I think they'll get after you more. So the more they can get in the transition game, the better they'll be because of their guard play. I think their guard play is as good as it's underrated. We talk about all these other teams. I think their guard play is as strong as anybody's.
Yeah, as the old saying goes, if you cannot block a shot, just throw him through the basket stanchion, and DJ Burns should at the very least be good enough to do that.
But I will say this: we forget, and we're going to talk about this later in the year. We're forgetting Boston College. I think they'll take a step and jump up in there, returning everybody. And they're
go ahead. I'm out. Go ahead. Goodman,
okay,
that's all you.
Goodman. I'll step on a limb. I'm not saying they're going to win the league. I'm saying don't be surprised if they're in the middle of the pack of this league, which is a great start for them. It was a great jump. This team won 6 games in the league a year ago. They're returning. Older. They're returning everybody.
Yep. And they got a really good freshman.
And they got a really good freshman group coming in. That's the recipe. We talk about all these old guys, the old team that was playing as well as anybody late in the year, won a game of the tournament, put Wake out of the tournament. They're returning everybody. So
Mekhi Ashton Langford is honestly, he might be creeping up on how old Dauster is. He's that old. I saw him the other day. I'm like, dude, I've known you since like
Unreal,
he was 16 years old. It feels like it was 20 years ago. I was covering him in recruiting. So when I think he committed to UConn years ago.
He did. He was a top 25 recruit.
Tough. Quentin Post has made a jump down low. That's going to be key. And the freshman, the kid Prince Aligbe.
Yes.
Oh my God. I love him. Like, I think he's going to be a stud. He may start for them. I don't know if he will because
but again, he's in an ideal situation, Jeff, because he get to come from the bench, and then is he playing well? He plays. If not, you go with your veteran guys. Donald Ham, those guys coming in, they got freshmen that get to play like freshmen behind veteran guys. So they're going to be 9 deep on a team that, like I said, they finished with 6 wins last year. So all it takes is 2 games, and they're already at 8-9 wins.
Mm-hmm. Well, you heard it here first, folks. This is why you come to the field of 68 for analysis, because Randolph Childress is touting Wake Forest and Boston College.
Hey,
next thing you know, we're going to have one of the Big East. And
Georgia Tech.
he's going to tell us how DePaul is going to win the Big East this season.
Nah.
He's big on the
It's still only water in here. I haven't mixed it yet.
Speaking of Cal, I just want to say for the record, Mekhi Ashton Langford's first college basketball season was the 2017-2018 season. This is going to be the first college basketball season since 2016-2017 that Charlie Moore is not starting at the point guard for somebody. It's crazy when you think about that. The last year that Charlie Moore was not playing college basketball, Ryan Arcidiacono was the point guard at Villanova. Just think about that for a second. Just take a step back and think about that for a second. All right. You mentioned a little bit earlier, Goodman. Kevin Keatts is coaching for his job. Real quick, I just want you to roll through who is on the hot seat this year in the ACC. Where could we potentially see jobs opening up? And are any of them going to be appealing enough to maybe get a big name involved when that time comes, if that time comes?
I mean, Brad Burnell's the one that you look at right away, and it's basically he makes a tournament, or I think he's done. They've got a fairly young AD there who wants to make basketball relevant again consistently. We know he can coach. That's never been the question. I just don't think they're going to be good enough. Brunell, he signed a 2-year extension. And remember, all these extensions, guys, for whoever's listening, they mean nothing. They mean jack shit. All that matters is the buyout. All that matters is the buyout here. So when somebody gets an extension, if the buyout's $500,000 or $1 million or whatever at the high major level, that is chump change. So Brunell, Jeff Capel at Pittsburgh, he was saved by the buyout last year. It was something like, I think it was like, I don't know, 13 million or something crazy, 11 million. It's down a bit. He took chances already on Dior Johnson, the freshman who's been arrested, suspended, talented kid, but it's bounced around to 10 different stops at different high schools. Capel needs to.
Oh, just 10 different high schools. That's it.
I think some of those high schools might be, back and forth. I don't know. But Keatts, as we said, has a buyout that's significant. But again, if they have another year like they had last year, then I think Kevin Keatts will coach last year at NC State. I think they'll be better than that, but they can't go ahead and win 4 games again in the ACC. Georgia Tech, new AD recently, just in the last month. The old AD has stuck with Josh for a couple of years, and obviously he saved his job 2 years ago in the pandemic by getting to the NCAA tournament. But they had a miserable year last year. They're probably set for a repeat performance this year. And I think that is it, those 4.
I will say this about Brad. If PJ Hall's healthy, they got a puncher's chance. If John Hughley's healthy, they provided shooting enough. Even though Dior got headlines, they got enough veteran perimeter shooting. They have all ACC caliber guy, even Keatts. They have a player on their team that's all conference consideration. That you got a chance with those guys. So that I think they got a chance to win. They may need things to go well, or not as deep as some of these other teams, but they got players, and they've gotten in a portal and changed things that they're not going to be a tough out for anybody. I think the least talented team will probably be Tech. And because of that change in administration, like you said, it always makes it difficult. You got to have a rapport with your AD. But I think those other guys got a puncher's chance with the individual players that they may have that they can ride upon. But for Clemson, PJ Hall's got to be healthy.
I think the much more interesting coaching conversation is how long Jim Boeheim and Jim Larrañaga last at their 2 stops, whether or not Syracuse or Miami opens at any point in time, because those guys they're getting up there in age. I don't want to put exact numbers on it because I always feel like that's a little bit rude to do, but they're not as young as Jeff Goodman. That's saying a lot.
Jim Boeheim turns 78 November 17th, so I'll put the number out there. And I love Jim. I do. I get along with him great. We've had our ups and downs over the years. He once told me and another writer to go get our Pulitzers elsewhere in a press conference. If you remember that was directed at me and another student writer at the time. But listen, to me, this is a hard one because I know Jim wants to go out the right way. I had lunch with him last year when he came into Boston, and he wanted to give it a shot with this young group that he's got coming in. He got Judah Mintz, talented freshman point guard that allowed Joe Girard to go over and play his natural position off the ball. You know, hope Benny Williams takes a jump. They got a couple other good freshmen. You know, the big question is, can he get to the tournament and then feel good about stepping away? You know, his line to me was, listen, yeah, I'm 77, or last year was 76 or 77. I'm not playing. And I'll tell you what, Jim Boeheim's wits, my dad's 80. My dad's got more energy than I do, and he's with it as much, if not more, than I am. Okay, so Jim Boeheim is with it. It's not hard. Agreed. But like, that's the one thing we put this. It's not like Jim Boeheim was just like, they didn't have shoot arounds day of games anyway. It wasn't like Jim Boeheim was this like relentless Tom Izzo-esque worker anyway. So I don't know if it'll be this year or next year. I would think it'll be one of the next 2 years that Jim Boeheim probably calls it a career. And then the big question, RC, is who steps in?
I think the first name comes to mind now if it goes the way Coach Boeheim wants. He's been on record saying he has a succession plan in place. I thought it'd be Adrian Autry. I thought he'd be the guy that's been there. He played at the program. He's been there through the years. I mean, where do you go? You would imagine a guy that's been in, he's earned the right to pick it. So he's going to pick someone. I can't imagine he's going to go and pick someone from outside of his
he won't.
tree. He won't do that. And I think Hopkins had his run and the way things turned out in Washington. I don't think anybody feels comfortable that he's going to be the guy. I think Autry right now would be the guy. I think that they would kind of turn the reins over to, because they need to. I think it's when they do it. When he's earned the right to do it whenever he wants. I mean, I'm never sure not going to be a person to say he should retire or not. But I do think they need to get somebody in there and then appoint them and let them make the announcement at least. I do think this year would be a great time if it's going to be somebody like Autry. Just make the announcement so everybody knows, and it doesn't hurt the recruitment when all the speculation happens.
Jeff, there's a question coming in from the chat. I don't know if it's relevant to this conversation, but I figured it's time to bring it up. They want to know if you're going to apologize for picking Duke to beat North Carolina by 42 points last season.
I think I said it was 52. I think it was 52.
All right. Then someone else wanted to know if you're going to apologize for saying that the ACC was only going to get one bid last year.
One bid ACC. That was pretty good. ACC.
Are you
guys got to admit that had a nice ring to it for a while.
Oh, you meant they were only going to get one bid to the national title game.
Yeah.
Or one bid to the Final Four. What was
nobody was pushing back, even RC, an ACC guy at that point in the season when we were heading into that might have been mid-January even, right?
It was later. It was later than that.
It might have been February. February. And again, the problem is you make your resume in as a league in November, December, and they got to win some games. I mean, you look at it here and, I got a few of these mid-tier teams. Obviously, Duke, Carolina play people. Virginia plays people. They got Baylor in Vegas. They got at Michigan, at Houston, versus Houston at home. But the Virginia Tech doesn't have a lot on its resume. Miami doesn't have a lot in terms of what they're playing in the non-conference. Florida State does. They got a really tough. Florida State will be the one that honestly should be in good shape, because if you look at their games, their big games are all in Florida. Florida at home. Then they play in the Orlando tournament, the ESPN one. Purdue at home, St. John's and Sunrise, Florida. So they're in good shape. I really like their preseason schedule that will benefit Florida State. But I'm with RC. Let me just say, I'm with RC on the Red Autry train. The hard part of that is they also have Jerry McNamara on their bench, who's kind of the fan favorite, right?
Yeah,
He's the more recent dude, the guy that everybody kind of associates with Syracuse.
Got a ring.
But Red, the one thing I'll say is Red's the associate head coach right now. So I don't know. I feel like if Boeheim made him the associate head coach, don't you have to give it to him if you're going to give it to somebody already on your bench?
And I thought about what you said, like McNamara, because he was on a national championship team. But when he promoted Red, I was like, man, I can't see how he would now appoint someone underneath him. And maybe he was expecting him maybe to move on or so. But we'll see. We'll find out in the near future, I'm sure.
All right. We got about 6 minutes left in the show. Really quick, I just want 30 seconds from each of you. Are you buying Kenny Payne having success at Louisville? Goodman, you go first.
Yeah, not now. I mean, they're going to be horrible this year. They don't have a point guard. I mean, L. Ellis, like, I don't know. I mean, L. Ellis, to me, he's got a lot of maturing to do in his game, right? And then they signed a kid late, a kid from, I think, Italy that I know nothing about as a backup point guard. I think the third guard is the Raptors kid. What's his name?
Percy Miller.
Yeah, I think Percy Miller's the third point guard right now. He might be their backup today. I don't know. So, no, I think Louisville's going to stink this year. I wouldn't be surprised if they finish like 14th in the league this year.
RC, you got something nicer to say?
I'm finishing my thought. Let me.
Well, I gave you 30 seconds, and you took 30 seconds talking 45. About rappers. RC,
45.
RC, you've picked Boston
Kenny
College.
Will be good.
You picked Boston College to finish top 4 in the conference, and
no, I did not
to win the national title. Are you calling Louisville? Are they a legit second weekend threat here?
I'm as concerned as Jeff is, and I think I'll take it one step further. My concern is I was expecting some momentum in recruiting.
Right. Me too.
Is what my concern is right now. This team was already set and made. I thought by now they have a bigger buzz with that staff in recruiting. And it seems like they put all their eggs in one basket, and we all know who that is. And I don't know if he's going there anyway. So I just would expect more momentum in recruiting that we hadn't seen from them. So that's what's the biggest alarm is for me right now.
All right, let's go through the rest of this really quick before we get into our official power rankings. All-ACC team player of the year. Anyone against Armando Bacot? Got to be him, right?
Hell no.
Yeah.
Bacot.
Armando. All right, who would you take for your preseason ACC all-first team?
Got to go with Wong, right?
I think you got to get Wong on there. I would have RJ Davis first team over Caleb Love.
Me too. I freaking love RJ. I think we all love RJ, don't we?
Yeah. And I think Tarquavian Smith is the other consensus guy for NC State.
He'll put up numbers.
After that, I think it's where you can it's more of an opinion. I think
it's those 4, and then for the almanac we had John Hughley. You guys,
Hughley,
Hughley's
going to put up numbers.
Put someone else there.
Yeah, I like Hughley. I think Hughley's going to put up, big. I think
he'll put up the numbers. But if Virginia finishes to where we think a guy like Reese Beekman, I think it'll be whoever's a guy. Whatever team takes that step and gets up in there, if it's a Caleb Mills leading of Florida State in scoring or Reese Beekman leading Virginia, I think it'll be one of those guys.
I think Jaden Gardner will be the guy because in a bad year last year, he still put up 15 and 6.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get into our power rankings. We'll start everyone. You know what I want to start with? I'm going to start with who you got in last place. We'll all go through and pick who we got in last place. RC, who you got in last place in the ACC?
I got the Yellow Jackets.
Yellow Jackets, Goodman.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Consensus. Sorry, Josh Pastner. 14th. After all that hatred, I think you got to go Louisville, right, Goodman? You can have someone under Louisville.
Yep.
I got Louisville
because of the guard play. Terrible guard play.
Everything is guard play with Jeff Goodman. That's why he loves the ACC this year, loaded with guards. 13th, RC, who you got?
I got Syracuse.
Ooh. Whoa.
I think they're going to have a tough time scoring. I think 12 or so. Where's the scoring going to come from? You're relying on a freshman to score.
Yeah.
I don't know where they're going to score their points. And even though the zone is going to keep them in games, they're going to have to score. I just don't know where it comes from. They don't have the elite perimeter play like they're accustomed to having. It used to be their 1, 2, and 3 could give you 20 a game right now, and I don't see that happening with the current roster. They're relying on freshmen, and that's tough to do in that league.
I got
Pitt.
I got Clemson
at 13. You got Clemson.
Yeah,
I got Clemson 12.
Again, and it's funny because again, we say we want about those guys. They have first team potential players on their team. That was my struggle with them. I don't disagree with you.
I just don't trust. I don't trust the Pitt culture right now. It just strikes me as the kind of thing where you could put all the talent on the roster there. I need to see them win before I actually believe that they're going to win. I have Clemson 12. Where do you guys have there?
Pitt 12.
Pitt 12. I have BC 11th.
Wake 11.
Wake 11. RC's mad about that.
Stop it, Jeff. You can't possibly believe that. There's no way. I'm not even going to answer this, man. Get out of here.
Who you got 11?
Who you got 11?
There's no way. I'll bet that there's no way Wake doesn't fit. Wake finishes lower than 9th or 10th. There's no way. 9th.
So who do you have 11?
Y'all already skipped who I had 11, so it doesn't matter.
Whoa.
Let's just keep. I'm not even commenting. Next.
What do you
I'm
mean?
gone
Who do
next.
you got 11?
I'm gone. I'm next.
Who do you got 11?
I had Pitt 11.
All right.
Pitt 11.
I
All
had
right.
Pitt
That's
11.
fair.
I'm a
Pitt
huge Hughley fan. I think he's like we just talked about. I think we talked about Dior, but they got shooters. They got transfers. They got shooters. So if you got 3-point shooters around him,
Yeah. RC is so
shame.
uncomfortable every time that we have to make a pick for someone being bad. He's such an ACC homer on this show. I love it. Go all in, baby.
Oh man, y'all
Go all
killing
in.
me. I'm
You know
trying to be positive.
we needed a good conference homer. Sean Miller's
It's
gone.
coming though. It's coming.
We don't
It's
have
coming.
anyone to ride for the Pac-12. Now we got RC riding for the ACC.
It's
I'm
coming.
in. I got
Let's finish.
your Demon Deacons 10th. RC Goodman. Who do you have 10th?
BC 10.
I got NC State 10.
Oh man, that's my sleeper pick. 9th, I have Syracuse.
Me too. Syracuse 10. 9. What do you got, RC?
I got BC. This is my Wake Forest BC area right
All
now.
right, that's fine.
All right, fair enough. I have NC State 8th, and to me, this is the cutoff where you have a real conversation about tournament teams. I would say NC State 8th.
Right.
NC State 8.
I got Wake and BC kind of 8th.
Okay.
8, 9.
Yep.
Oh,
8,
he's
9.
going pods. He's going to pods. It's
Yeah,
the Christian
I did.
Hackenberg right
I
here.
did.
All right. I have so these next 4 for me are all just kind of like you could throw them in a hat and pick them out, but I have Virginia Tech 7th. I just at the end of the day, I think they are the least talented of that group. So it's a
I
little
have them 4th. I have them 4th.
Virginia
I
Tech.
have Notre Dame 7th.
I got Notre Dame 7th.
I have Notre Dame 6th.
Miami.
I have a 2-way tie, and you're gonna get on me for being a homer.
What do you mean? You can't do a tie.
I got a tie. This is my Duke Virginia Tech area.
You have Duke and Virginia Tech 5th and 6th.
I have Duke and Virginia Tech 5th.
Ooh, love it. Love it.
This is what I'm
going
saying.
up.
I think again, a tournament team. It's not that I'm crushing Duke. It's a tournament team, but we've already discussed the things about. I think they're still in a tournament. I just think they're going to struggle early.
Did Shammond Williams call you? Was that what it was? Did he get back in your ear and tell you that Duke was over? That
Fifth.
it's
If I'm
done?
picking a fifth,
They're
Jeff,
never
that's
coming
not an
back.
insult. They're super young. Like they're the youngest team in the league by far. And there's no Paulo McCarroll in walking through that door.
I thought about putting them. Listen, I thought long and hard, RC,
Yeah.
about not putting Duke in my preseason top 25. I just couldn't do it. So I put it at like 14, which is way too high for me. Like I should have 20.
I have Florida State 5th, Goodman.
Yeah, I got Florida State 5th. I got Virginia Tech, like I said, 4th.
I have Miami 4th. RC.
They're going to be really good. I got Miami 4th as well.
Yeah, I got Miami 4th. I went Duke 3. I couldn't bring myself to drop them lower just because I know what their ceiling is at the end.
Yeah.
But I think if we're going on what they are at the start of the season, I think they're in that 6-7 range today, as opposed to what they will be once they figure everything out. Who you got 3rd?
If they figure it out.
Duke.
Florida State.
Florida State. Love it. So I have Duke 3rd.
We all have Carolina and then Virginia. I would
And
assume.
Virginia.
We all have Carolina, Virginia 1 and 2.
And man, it was tough. I got to say, I still think about flipping them and going with Virginia at 1. I really do. I just think they're going to be – Tony Bennett's got a team that fits him, and they're going to be super focused. And Carolina is going to have some ups and downs this year. They are. They've still not, like, convinced me that they are the team that they were from March 5th on. I want to see them.
Well, they haven't played yet, Jeff. How are they going to convince
I want to
you?
see them,
Right? You haven't even seen a practice. They haven't get out of here. Listen, this has been the Field of 68 After Dark ACC preview show. If you're still watching, make sure you go buy the Almanac. The link is in the description below. Subscribe to the Field of 68 Daily. Go cop some merch from our merch store, Field of 68 shop, Field of 68.shop, and check in tomorrow night. I will be joined by Terrence Oglesby and Randolph Childress for the Big 12 preview show. Who knows who RC is going to hype up
Kansas
tomorrow
State.
night?
It might be Kansas State.
It could be. I got ties there.